Hello, gentlemen, barbarian savages. Rooster here, and I'm going to talk today a little bit about GynoPlanet series. Still down here doing governmental and societal controls aspect, and today we're going to talk about big oil and how big oil controls pretty much most of the planet and controls you in your everyday life. Um, Big oil with these here, and this goes along with our Elysium. We've already talked about big media, big food, big agro, big pharma, and the big banks. Today we're going to talk about big oil. That'll be the last one of those. Um, but how does it affect you? Well, you look at big oil. Big oil is Standard Oil. It's the Seven Sisters, is what they're known as. Standard Oil, Exxon, Mobil, Shell, BP or British Petroleum, Chevron, and Texaco. Okay, the Seven Sisters. Those seven companies control 99% of all the oil and petroleum products in the world, globally, everywhere. Okay, now from a Mgtow standpoint, what does this mean? Obviously, you have your Elysium Elite there, and it's one of the control factors that keeps you from getting up to the Elysium, keeps you down here, keeps you in a position where you have to work, you have to provide for your wife, you have to push the button 8 hours a day, you have to, be poisoned and live in a police state, right? But what big oil is trying to do for the elite, for the alpha females and the alpha males that are in Elysium, is to stretch that resource, stretch it out, because they're not going to, that alpha female is not going to give up her car, you know, she's not going to give up her Hummer, her big van that she wants to haul her kids around in. She's not going to give up her refrigerated food that's there instantly when she wants it. You know, she's not going to give up her trips and her first class, riding in the plane to Jamaica 5 times a year to go on vacation to show off her body to see if she can get uh, even more resources from a higher value male, that she's looking for. She's not going to give that up. And big oil is just another set of those controls developed by alpha males to hold on to those females, right? And for those females to extract resources from while you're down here pushing the button at the stamping plant 8 hours a day. Remember that. So let's talk about a quick history of big oil. Like all of this stuff, a lot of it starts with the Rockefellers. Now, the Rockefellers are specifically an oil family. He's the first billionaire in the United States, and he was a billionaire back when billionaires didn't even freaking exist at all. He had the first monopoly. He's the reason that the United States government had to write the Antitrust Act of the 1880s because of him and what he did. All of the terrible stuff that he did, price fixing and gouging and running his competition out. And he had a monopoly that was so huge, it was just completely formidable. And it was bigger than the government, right? Well, the United States government broke his company up into 35 separate companies. That's how big it was. Now, over the last 150 years, those 35 companies, through deregulation and the tax laws and all that stuff, have managed to combine back together and conglomerate into three, right? You got ExxonMobil, Shell and BP are together, and Chevron and Texaco is together, right? So They're all conglomerated back in again. Um, and everybody knows about how the Rockefellers did all of their stuff. So I'm not going to really talk too much about that. And I don't want to talk history anyways. The one thing outside of the United States in big oil's history that you need to keep in mind is something that happened in Saudi Arabia in 1936. In 1936, this is how far back this stuff goes. A company called Aramco went to Saudi Arabia and asked for all of the mineral, drilling, and oil rights to the entire country. And Saudi Arabia said, okay, for so much gold, we'll give you all of those rights. Because they didn't think of anything about oil over there then. It's just sand to them. They don't care if you put up oil drilling rigs. This company, Aramco, became a state within the Saudi Arabian state. They went into legislature and made sure that they could pass no laws that anything against the production of oil, the export of oil, the development of oil, the deployment of oil wells, anything like that. They went into Saudi Arabia and basically ran the country. Okay, and Saudi Arabia got gold. That's all they wanted was gold, gold, gold. But that gives you an idea when you think about that. That company got bigger than the entire government within the country. And that is kind of the model that has been followed along since then, right? Um, then, of course, OPEC came out because of all of that, and they didn't want one American company controlling all of this stuff. But the thing to keep in mind is America, still to this day, from that 1936 signature pact that they had with Saudi Arabia, the United States government owns Saudi Arabia's mineral, oil, and drilling rights. That's scary when you think about it. One country owning another country's entire mineral and drilling rights. And that leads you to believe a lot of things, like maybe that's why, the 9/11 attackers, were 19 of them were Saudi Arabian. They didn't prosecute Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has been our ally for so long. Instead, we went and attacked Iraq, even though 19 of the people that ran those planes into the twin towers on 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia. Kind of weird, huh? So, anyways, I want to talk about a graph here, something that you need to understand about oil and how it's going in our future, right? And here is our graph, and it goes from the 1900s to about 2050, which is in the future. If you look at 2000 right now or 2020 right now, this is all in the future. And this is the past, right? First, you have oil discovery, which maxed out in about the 1950s and has been on the decline ever since and is going lower and lower and lower. And it's becoming harder and harder and harder to discover more oil. They're trying 40,000 foot, 5 mile deep water horizon type oil rig wells out in the middle of the ocean. They're trying the tar sands. They're trying oil sands. They're trying to extract oil from rocks in Colorado and in the northern parts of Canada. It's getting harder and harder and harder to find oil on this planet. And that is represented by this decline right here. It's going away, right? They say that there's about 3 trillion barrels of oil left inside the earth. We've used 1 trillion up to this point, and we're using about, just the United States is using 15 million barrels a day. A day. Scary. Okay? So the second thing on this graph is oil production. And oil production, you see it goes up and then it goes down. Goes up, then it goes down. Goes up, then it goes down. Well, what are each one of these upticks? Well, I'll tell you what each one of these upticks is. This one is World War II. This one is the Vietnam War. And this one is 2000, and that is the Iraq War. Isn't that interesting? Gets up to a point where it's just about ready to start going down, and then a war breaks out, and it goes up. And then it starts going down again, and then a war breaks out, and it goes up. And then it starts going down again, oil production starts going down again, and then a war breaks out, and it goes up. Isn't that peculiar how that happens? And then you have the third graph, which is consumption. And consumption is just going up and up and up and up and up. And you can see you have the Gulf War right here. And then you have whatever this is going to be. This is in the future. What happens when this consumption line hits this production line? Another war so that it goes up again, or not a war and then it's going to go down? Now remember, as oil goes down, each time oil production goes down, more and more people don't have refrigeration. More and more people don't have transportation. More and more people don't have their shoes being delivered to Walmart. More and more people can't get to work because now gas is $8 a gallon, right? So that's what we need to look at. This right here is the key to what comes next. And that is this. Oil is different. Oil is different than all of the things that I've discussed up to now, the media, food, big agro, big pharma, everything. Oil is different. Oil is strategic. Oil, since the 1960s, JFK came out and said it is an aspect of national security. We will go to war for oil, and we have gone to war for oil. Oil is the lifeblood of the female quality of life. That's what you have to keep in mind. You are being sacrificed. You are going to war. You are giving up your life. You are getting shot with bullets. Other men are getting shot with bullets to protect their land for the female quality of life. Okay? What would happen if we went without oil for 6 months? If all the oil disappeared today, just like that, you would have a global recession, the magnitude you've never seen. You would have basically World War III because Russia, China, and the United States would send their armies, send their navies, send their air force to wherever they could to find oil, regardless of national borders, regardless of anything. Okay? You would have fuel costs $19, $20, $30 a gallon, where it costs you $500 to fill up your car for the week. Now you're going back and forth to work. Can you make it back and forth to work 5 times in a 5-day work cycle? And, with one tank, at 500, and then at the end of the week you make $750 or $1,000. Literally half, 3/4 to half of your salary goes just to putting gas into your vehicle to get back and forth to work, and it becomes a cycle. So people are not gonna be able to work. They're gonna run out. On Thursday afternoon, you're gonna have the highways filled with 1 million people running out of work. They can't get to work. They get fired. Okay. Think about all of the things that run on oil for this feminine quality of life that we have. Cars, farm tractors, all the trucks that carry everything. Shoes, coats, hats, stoves, everything, light fixtures, anything you can think of gets transported on a truck at some time. Planes, there's not going to be any vacations. Cargo planes are going to be the most important thing. You're not going to be, if you want to travel, you're going to have to walk or take a horse. And and trains, still a lot of trains use petrol. Okay, then you got China and India with their population so high, and all of the gas that they use. Okay, you're going to get griping and yelling and screaming from the population for the government to do something. And what is the government going to do? Military action. Okay, and that's where the military-industrial complex comes in. Okay, this is the one thing that is different than all of the other things that I've talked about under societal controls. Oil will kickstart the military industrial complex. And the military industrial complex needs oil for their planes and tanks and their trucks and to get the Marines here and there and to get the Navy here and there. You know, they need that oil for all that. So it becomes a double-edged sword where they need the oil to keep the war machine going, to get the oil to keep the quality of life for mama good. You understand? So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, you talk about the investment level. What level of investment that they're willing to go to get to these 40,000 foot deep and these tar sands and stuff like that? It's equal to a space program in each country. The entire budget that NASA uses is how much money the United States government is using right now on a daily basis to try to find this oil, right? So it's a lot of money, man. Now, military action. I've said oil is different, and it is because a lot of stuff that we talked about is in the future on these other things, the media and all that stuff. But when it comes to oil, we've already done this stuff. We've already done this. When we went into Vietnam, we used false flag and we used the military to go in there. We used the Bay of Tonkin to go into Vietnam. When we went into Iraq, we used false flag. We used weapons of mass destruction. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein was not associated with Al Qaeda. Okay? It was a flat out lie. And everybody in the world just sat there and looked at the United States as we're invading another country. And George Bush and Cheney are going, yep, weapons of mass destruction and Al Qaeda, yep. And the rest of the world is just going, what the fuck are these guys talking about? And what did we go in there for, really? We went in there to get their oil. That's the only reason we went in there. And I can tell you, Cheney used to be part of Halliburton. Halliburton is a oil discovery company. They drill wells to find oil. And lo and behold, he used to be the CEO of Halliburton. And Halliburton does all the transportation in Iraq, does all of the discovery in Iraq, provided all of the protection in Iraq, did all of the transportation of the oil from the oil fields to the tankers in Iraq, set up all the refineries in Iraq. No bid contracts. Nobody else even got to bid on it, only Halliburton. And they made so much money, it's not even funny. And Bush was an oil man from day one. His father was from Texas, was an oil man, and made his millions in oil before he became the president. And then his son became the president, right? So this corruption and this stuff is just, it's beyond, it's beyond obvious, for one thing. Let me get a drink. Ugh. I get to talking so much and my throat hurts. Okay. So, military action is going to use. Now, what happens if we don't get this oil? Right? Prices are going to increase. Businesses are going to fail. Banks are going to fail right behind them. You're going to have huge homelessness. Inflation is going to go through the roof. You're going to have riots. You're going to have unrest in the streets. You're going to have gangs running freaking black markets. Our society, our entire society right here is going to teeter on collapse. Okay? These people cannot have that. They cannot have riots in the streets. They're not going to have it. They want their ladies, to be able to walk down the street in their pretty dresses and everything's going to be peaceful. And they're not going to have it. They can't have this Mad Max world. Okay? So, what happens when that happens? That's the next step, which is the police state. That's my next video that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to go there right now, but you get the idea, right? So, what else can we talk about? We'll talk about the military-industrial complex and how that goes into effect, right? I already talked about how it worked in the 60s with Vietnam and the Gulf of Tonkin. But we went into Lebanon, we went into Panama, we went into Serbia, okay? We went into Iraq, okay? The Cold War is the primary one that you can look at for the military-industrial complex, how you know that it exists, okay? In the 80s, Reagan ran the USSR out of money. He made missiles and planes, and he had Lockheed Martin and Boeing and all those aerospace industries making tanks and planes and everything. And Russia went out of business. They went bankrupt. And the Berlin Wall fell in 1991, right? Well, as soon as the Berlin Wall fell, Clinton came in and cut all that stuff in half. Okay, we went back to making TVs and motorcycles and stuff, and we stopped making tanks and all that stuff. And here's the key. What happened in Japan is proof of what our military industrial complex, how big it was. Japan went into the biggest recession they've ever had, and they haven't come out of it. It's been 30 years. Why? Because the United States stopped making tanks, stopped making planes, stopped making all of this stuff to beat Russia, and went back to making stuff that Japan was making before. So this competitor comes up, Japan goes into a huge depression. That's proof that the military industrial complex exists and how big it is. Our military industrial complex is big enough to send one country into bankruptcy, and when we stop and go back and start making regular products, send another country into a depression that lasts for 30 years. That's how much money and power is involved in the United States military industrial complex. Okay? And what is it? It's Congress, it's the Pentagon, it's the DoD, it's all of the contractors associated with everything you can possibly think of, from wrenches to toilets to turbines to airplane parts to tank treads, every possible thing. And it's arms merchants, from any kind of arms, from small arms to rocket launchers, anything that you can think of around the world. And it's all swirled together into a big complex of money, and it's taxpayer paid for. Okay? Now, what is the next step? And I think I said it before. It's going to be right here. And I think it's Iran. I think this right here, you mark my words right now, we are not at war with Iran. It is November 29th, December 1st of 2016. Mark my words, within 3 years, if we get to that point right there when the production of oil starts going down and the price per barrel starts going up, the United States is going to go to war with Iran. You watch. And one more thing to talk about. Okay, so that's a military industrial complex. Now, that's kind of all of the how that stuff's tied together, right? In general. Now, let's talk about how the money is tied together, okay? And that is something that's called the petrodollar. Now, the petrodollar is something that's very important and very unique to understand because this is the little web that goes back to the banking. Remember when I first started this, I told you how media and food and agri and all this stuff, it's all webbed together. Now, this little web goes back to the banking part. And I didn't talk about it under the banking when I talked about banking because I wanted to save it for this. But the petrodollar is something that's very unique and very important because the petrodollar is the only reason that the United States is not at this very moment a second class or a third world country like Mexico or Honduras or South Africa or anything like that. The petrodollar is the only reason, and I'm going to tell you why right now. Okay? The petrodollar came into existence under Nixon and Kissinger when OPEC came out. Remember I told you a little history and the 14 countries got together? Well, Nixon and Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia, who we had power over because we own all of their mineral rights, and they said, listen, we're going to make one law with you guys. We're going to allow OPEC to do all this stuff. We're going to increase the House of Saud, but we want one law. All oil in the world must be bought or sold with American dollars. You can't use yen. You can't use rubles. You can't use francs. You can't use German marks. You can't use euros. Well, euros didn't exist back then. But you understand what I'm saying? Only American dollars. That one law and that one thing that they did changed the entire landscape of how the world works to this day. Okay? The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. It's used everywhere. Okay? It is the only currency which oil is bought or sold on global markets. Now, what does that mean? That means if you're Nigeria or you're Ireland or you're Germany or you're Australia, you have to go to the bank and exchange your Nigerian money or your German francs or your Australian dollars for American dollars, right? Which helps the American economy because that's money that has to go to Australia, has to go to Germany, has to go to Russia, has to go anywhere. And guess how many countries use oil? Every country in the world. So that means American dollars have to go to every country in the world, right? So that that country can buy heating oil, gas, fuel oil, tanker oil, whatever. You have to use American dollars. Now, if you could buy it with any kind of currency, America would be a third world country right now because it wouldn't. That is the only thing that is propping the United States up at this point right now. Okay, so if you're an import country, you got to buy dollars to keep your country running. If you're an export country, if you're exporting um, oil or whatever, you know, your goods and services get turned into U.S. money, which is U.S. debt. We're also covering our debt by making people buy our dollars, okay, so that they can buy oil, okay. If you're an export company, it's doubly worse because you're exporting something and you're trading something that's real and tangible. Oil is real, like gold or silver or anything like that. It's real for paper, okay, for fake paper debt, okay, okay. And here's the big thing. We talked about how wars start when production goes down and they start wars. Now, here's some other little clues. If you try to get off the petrodollar, okay, a few countries have tried to get off the petrodollar. One of them was Libya. The military, the United States military, is going to come to your country and visit you. And like you said, it's of national security interest. So Libya tried to get off the petrodollar in what? 2004. So we went, attacked them, and invaded them. And he, Muammar Gaddafi is so bad and all this stuff. Libya was one of the best countries in northern Africa to live in. They had a wonderful healthcare system. They had a great transportation system. They had wonderful colleges, great recreation areas, vacation areas. It was a very rich country. The American media made Muammar Gaddafi look like the biggest criminal in the world, and he was basically assassinated by his own people, right? Now, here's the other thing. There's one other person that tried to do it in 2001. Double whammy. 2001, production of oil was low, and Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq, said, hey, why don't we convert to the euro? I think Iraq is going to convert to the euro. We're going to buy our oil and sell our oil in euros. His country got invaded. He got taken over. And as I remember, he got hung. Okay? So, and it was never, ever converted over to euros. Because once the United States government got in there and got in that country, petrodollar kept going, right? Okay? You have to understand the only thing that is propping up the American government at this point right now is, and keeping us as a superpower, is the petrodollar. Okay? Now, I want to leave you with one other little thought right here for you as we go forward with our new Donald Trump president. There's one other country that wants to end the petrodollar. Okay? There's one other leader out there that wants to end the petrodollar, and he says that he wants to either go to euros or go to yens or maybe go to rubles or whatever, and that is Vladimir Putin. Now, he's the only one left that wants to get off the petrodollar. He doesn't want to use American dollars to buy his oil. And now, since he said that, and since he came out with that, haven't you noticed all the problems that they're having in Syria, all the problems that they're having in Crimea, all the problems that they're having in the Ukraine? Okay? Another projection for you. Will we go to war with Russia over oil? Now keep in mind, Saudi Arabia and the Middle East provide most of the oil to Malaysia and Asia and China. Russia provides most of its oil to Europe. And the United States, which is now the biggest producer of oil in the world, even bigger than Saudi Arabia, provides its own oil and most of this hemisphere, Canada and South America. But we don't hardly export any oil whatsoever. We use almost all of it ourselves. And we actually import some. So that's the question. These petrodollars, will they go away, or will we go to war with Russia in order to prop up? Or will Russia, if the petrodollar disappears, will Russia end up doing to us what we did to them at the end of the Cold War? Will the United States go bankrupt because it doesn't have a currency propping itself up all throughout the world? Something to think about. And if we do go bankrupt, what are all of the eights, nines, and tens all of these alpha females going to do? How are they going to keep their clutch purses? How are they going to keep their uh, high heel shoes? How are they going to keep all their pretty dresses and stuff like that? How are they going to stay out of the mines? How are they going to not have to go to work like the rest of the world? It's a very good question. Anyways, that's all I have on this. The next one that's coming up is the police state, and that'll be the last one for our social and societal controls. And then we'll be going into the revolt section, which I'm sure everybody's looking forward to. I am. Well, that's all I have. And as always, take it easy.